doing some watercolor ocean kind of themes, and you can see what I've got kind of going. And I'm going to show you this technique first. And if I have time, I'm going to show you also how to make ocean things using a stencil and some color lifting like this here. I color lifted that. This is depends on the paper and the paint you use, but you look at the color lifting I got from this. That is actually, I painted the wash first and then lifted the color off of the stencil. So I'll talk to you about that. We'll do that, and we'll get started because I've got lots to do, lots to cover. But you can see I love doing watery kind of things, and the palette is very limited. You'll notice that I don't use a lot of colors here. I've got, for my set, I've got indigo and Payne's gray, and I'll show you how I did these two, by the way. See this little splattery, this splatter look is a trick that you won't believe how I did it. I've got some gouache, so let me kind of go over the supplies before I get all over the place, which I always do anyway. So the supplies, of course, are the Niji watercolors. I'll be using mostly indigo and Payne's gray, maybe a little bit, but layers of indigo. I love the burnt sienna and the gamboge to make a little bit of a sand color if you're going to make sand. But really, maybe I'll use some, in this set, I may use just a touch of the Viridian possibly for the water. Now this set here, I could also pull from this set, which I'm gonna go, now I see my camera angle. Okay, I can use gamboge, I can use Quinlan gold, burnt sienna, but I also will use indigo. Again, indigo is going to be the color for the ocean, and maybe a little turquoise, I think would be really cool. So I've got my colors, and what I love about this whole thing, let's say I'm going to go to the beach, which I am. I'm planning a trip to the beach very soon. It's been way too long. I'm also going to take this with me. My brushes, of course, are the fusion brushes because they're so nice to work with. I'm going to take a little inexpensive Hake brush. This is the BFC series. It holds a heck of a lot of water. And I'm going to take my water brushes and just an assortment of brushes. The reason I like this, let's say you're out on the field, you're out in the water, you're at the park, and you are using your watercolor brushes, and after they're all wet, and you just, where do you put them without damaging them? And also when you need to dry them, where do you dry them? Well, this is the greatest drying rack that you can ever have. So I'm going to be using those today. And I like that this new Fudemaki has, what do you call these? Little pockets. This is the first time in Yasutomo history that we started to get pockets for our Fudemaki, and I just think it's great. So I just wanted to share that. I'm going to be using that today, and I'm going to use my the watercolor postcards. I did cut some in half because I wanted to do some techniques to go a little quicker, but I've got the cold press and the hot press, which isn't really that hot. It's actually a very nice, very soft texture. It's not totally a plate finish. It is a kind of a it's in between the two. It's actually in between a cold press and a traditionally hot press. So I like it because there's some texture to it. It's a hot press for me is not the easiest to work with. So, but these two are fabulous if you like these. Okay, and also I'm going to show you a cool thing with our Niji artist crayons. These are just clear wax. There we go, I'll get it up there for you. They are amazing for making the whites, to keep the white of the water that your water. You'll see what I mean. I'll do it right away. That'll be my first thing. And I have some Niji, some little detail liners so I can do some lettering because I love doing that. But the first thing I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to take my watercolor. I'm going to take a piece of, it doesn't matter, I guess this might be a cold press or hot press, I don't know what it is. And I'm going to mask off, if I can find my little masking plate here. Everything sort of disappeared on me. Oh, there it is. I already did that. I'm going to show you what I use. Here we go. This is just a piece of masonite. It's from Ampersand. It's called oh boy, it's an artist board. It's not the gesso board, it's the art panel. And it's very nice, crisp white. I clean it off. If it gets stained, I clean it off with one of those magic sponges from the kitchen. It makes it pure white, and I just love it. And I use it to just kind of get my watercolor paper masked off. And it's also a great surface. If you're out on the field, you need a little desk, you need a little place to do your thing. You've got it with this. So I wanted to share that. You've got to have these kinds of things. They're so cool. I'm going to mask it off with some masking tape. Now, this masking tape is pretty sticky, and I'm noticing that it sticks too much and it kind of pulls off a little bit of the paper. And I'm sorry about that. I wish I could fix the camera, the focus thing, but I can't. So if you go in and out of blur, I apologize. Here, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to sort of grease it up with my fingers because I don't want it to tear. Or if you don't grease it up with your fingers, put it on your pants. You're not seeing what I'm doing, but I'm putting it on my pants so that it takes a little bit of that tack out, so it's not so, it's not so sticky that it's going to pull out my paper. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just taking it, I'm putting it down on my pants and lifting, getting a little bit of that lint on the tape so that it kind of will hopefully not tear up my paper. Let's just hope that works. And I'm just trying to get this masked off without, I'm trying to make them straight as I can. And not that it's not that straight, but that's all right. Okay. First thing I'm going to show you is how I do that beach kind of thing. And I'm going to take my Niji artist pencil. Actually, it's a Yasutomo. I'm sorry. It's not a Niji. It's a Yasutomo artist pencil. I like it because it's a 9mm. It's a little bit thicker than a normal, 3 or 5, mechanical pencil. It has a little bit thicker lead, but not too thick. We have 3 different sizes, but this one is, a good size. So I'm going to decide, I'm going to make my area that's going to be the sandy wave.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt you here,
Sure.
but we got a few questions again about the board you used. Did you say it was the Ampersand Art board, or was it?
It's an art panel. It's called an art panel.
Art panel.
It's just a white. It's like a simple masonite. It's like a tempered masonite with a really nice smooth finish. And like I mentioned, I use that stuff. It's the magic eraser, Mr. Clean. That stuff that's kind of a foamy stuff. I clean this off and it looks brand new and pristine if I get stains, and that's why I like it. So,
all right, thank you.
Hope that helps.
Art panel, everybody. Sorry.
Ampersand by Ampersand. So I'm just doing a little beachy thing here. I'm going to do 2 different. Actually, I'm not going to do. I'm going to change. I'll leave it like that. I'm just not going to overthink it. So what I did is, if you can see, I don't know if you can see, but I made very little line, very faint lines here, and I'm going to take my crayon. And I'm just going to make right along the lines. I'm going to kind of draw, but I'm going to sort of do it a little scribbly. I don't want it to be perfectly straight line. I might even to make some little bubbly kind of shapes. I'm just going to do kind of uneven, sort of swirling around, but I am following that line. I'm not going past that line. I'm actually going to just kind of bring it up like this. You can see, if you see what I'm doing, I'm just scribbling this clear blender crayon onto the paper, and this is going to mask off, of course. The watercolor is going to resist the crayon, and I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm just going to make maybe an uneven line. I've got a little wax here, just kind of, and I don't see it. I'm just going to have to trust that I'm doing a good coverage, and that's kind of why I like this crayon, because it doesn't make me I can't strive for perfection if I can't see it. And I think that the looser I am with my watercolors, the better they come out. So having this really kind of willy-nilly way of masking off, I don't see it, but I just have to go by feel. And I'm using that little drawing, that little pencil drawing is kind of like my kind of guide. And I'm just going to put a few more little dots here and there just as a resist. And now I think I got it. So now I'm going to take my paint, and I'm going to start with the indigo in this. And both sets have indigo. Indigo is a very good color because it's sort of a low staining or non-staining color. And it's really great if you do want to lift areas. If you find that there's just too much color, you can always lift a little bit with the indigo. It's kind of it should be non-staining in most companies, most brands. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a lot of indigo here. So I'm going to take my little tray. And I'm just gonna this is actually, so you know, this is our porcelain dish, and it's just so great for doing large washes. I mean, if you're out in the field, you're gonna have to do it in one of these areas, which is fine. You can do it because there's a lot of areas here to do that, but I'm gonna be lazy since I'm sitting here at my desk. But I'm just gonna make a nice dark wash of indigo right now, just the first layer. And I want it to be nice and dark, like pretty concentrated pigment right here. And maybe I'll add a little turquoise, because I think, why not? Let's just add a little turquoise, wherever that is. It's the third one on this lineup here. I'm just going to put a little turquoise just to brighten that up a little bit. Each brand has its own, indigo is across brands is slightly different from each other, different brands. So if you want it to have a little more blue, just pop it in a little bit of turquoise and you got it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse, get as much of this pigment out so I'm not wasting it. And I'm going to fill my brush with mostly water. And I'm going to go at the top of this. Actually, I'll start up here. I do want you to see up here. I'm going to start with a wash of just light, almost like maybe even white. If I can, oops, that's not white. I'm going to go right in here. There we go, like light. And then what I'm going to do is I have to kind of remember what I'm doing here. What I need to do is I have this like wash, this sort of a light pale wash of kind of that blue color. And I may even take my sponge, or not my sponge, my paper towel, and kind of dab off some of this, because that might be just too much color.
New question for you, Karen. If someone doesn't have indigo, someone asked, can they do Prussian blue and black?
Now, Prussian blue is a little more staining, but that's fine. Yes, you can do that. But you're not going to be lifting it necessarily. Just there we go. Now I'm going to do dark. So yes, Prussian or Payne's gray if you have that, but it will stain a little bit more. So it's going to be kind of a different look. If you, I mean, especially if you want to lift color off, just don't try to lift color up. But see what I just did? I'm trying to make this a blended wash. I'm not going to worry about it. Every painting turns out different depending on what it just depends on my hand, what I'm doing, but I'm just going to go along that edge where I did my little mask. I'm going to go right to my pencil line. And because some of that mask is still, it's going to allow me to make that nice little foamy edge on the C. There we go. Just taking that color and really putting a lot of it right in this area, right at the base of this. And then I'm letting it dry, which I shouldn't, but I need to just blend this a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and soften that so that I have a very smooth edge here. There we go. And now I'm just clearing my brush off, mostly water. In fact, it's all water at this point there. So there's a nice, I've got a nice lay down of color. I'm going to do this again, except I'm going to go a little more dramatic. I'm going to take, it's going to be nearly white. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make a wet right in this area, just a nice wash of mostly water. And by the way, I'm using my number 5 fusion brush. It's the biggest brush that this line carries, that we have in this line. I'm hoping that we'll have a flat wash brush in one day by the same vendor. That would be so great, because these are such great brushes. So I'm just creating this wet. I'm going to do a wet into wet. So I'm just doing it in the second area between these crayon marks. And again, I'm going to grab some of my indigo. If you don't have indigo, go ahead and use Payne's gray, or if you have black would work with some blue, maybe phthalo blue also, that would be fine. Prussian blue, and any combinations of blue will be fine with a little dark. Okay, so there I'm going to take this and I'm doing the same thing. I'm just going along that edge and I'm just creating that, just the edge. And then I'm going to take my brush, clean out most of the brush, and just kind of let that wash just sort of blend up a little bit. So that's much softer. And there we go. I'm just going to get that so it's not so bright white. Here we go. I'll just go ahead and give it, like, it's dramatic, but I don't want it to be perfectly white. There we go, like that. Now I can, this is probably not as dark as I want it to be, but I can always come back and do another layer, which I will probably to get the depth. And usually that would mean after it dries, my first layer dries, I can do the second layer. But I'm going to try doing the layer just by doing it. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to go right really dark right in this, right on the edge of that line again. I'm going to just get that line right there where my pencil line is. Taking that brush, the total edge to that pencil line. And while it's still wet, I'm just depositing color in that wet area. So there we go, like that, just nice and deep, like the deep blue ocean. And where it's a hard edge, I just need to take my brush and just sort of soften that, like lay down the edge and just soften that edge. You can see I'm getting that nice gradation. And then again, like this, here we go. And I'm not trying not to rub too much, but I just want that nice deep color. And I noticed that some of my blue sort of leaked over here. I'm not worry about it. I'll leave it there. When it dries, I can lift it because indigo does have a nice lifting quality. So I'm not worried about it. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Make another dark deposit while everything's still wet. And that's kind of my water scene here. And I can just kind of, I just want it to fade from dark to light, going to the lightest as I go up these little waves. Now I'm going to put a little, whoops, that's not the color. I'm going to put a little turquoise in there because it just needs that, I think. I'm going to just just drop a little bit of turquoise in that just to kind of brighten that water scene up just a little bit. And I might even do it up here. See how I'm just getting this nice foamy water waves going on here. I'm going to let that dry. Can come back with some watercolor right in here. Maybe I'll just kind of tap that in. Well, that's not going to happen because it has the crayon. So the crayon is totally resisting that, which is great. I'm just going to let that dry. And now I'm going to do a sand. So I'm going to keep this very clean from any blue. I don't want any blue. I need to clean my brush out completely. Whoops, sorry about that. I shook the camera. Now I'll take a little spot here in my tray that looks neutral enough, and I'm going to put some quinacridone gold, but I don't want much. I'm going to put a little bit of the sienna color. Let me tell you what this is. I'm going to use a little burnt umber and a burnt sienna just as a combination. I'm just going to try some of my warmer colors, and I'm going to make a very pale yellowish brown, very pale, not much color, mostly water. And that's about as probably as you can see, if you can see that, it's just super pale with a slight yellow tone. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just put in a wash of that color all along here. So that's my sand. Now, if you live in certain parts of the country, like Florida, certain parts of Florida have beautiful white sands. So you can make it any color. You have in Southern California, it's like a gray color. Really, there's so many different colors of sand. So black sand in some places in Hawaii. So just kind of whatever area you're dreaming about or that you're at, you just kind of emulate that color. And I'm just going to take my what's this thing called? Paper towel. And I'm just blotting a little bit just to kind of keep it light. And that's all for that. Now, after this dries, I'm going to do some shading and some more deepening, but really I've got the basic look. You can see this beautiful foam going on. And I probably should go ahead and just do a little drying because I did want to show you the next step. Now I'm using a heat gun, which you've got to be careful when you use a heat gun. Not to get, if you have a hair dryer, that's great, but I am trying to do this faster, but I don't want to get it so hot that I'll warp the paper. So I'm just kind of keeping it a distance. I'm just trying to dry it as best I can. And I did notice that bled through, but I wanted that crisp line, that white edge. And what I'm seeing now is this piece needs some white added, but I just love this little frothy foam look that the crayon created, which is new. I've never done it, never made masks for water using this, and I really like it. So that's kind of a nice way to keep your white areas and to create that ocean look. So I've got most of that dry, and here's an area that's not dry, but I'm gonna not worry about it. See this area here where it's sort of, it bled? I'm gonna show you how it should lift, and I'm gonna give you a little, kind of a tip on lifting color. If you find that you can have color where you don't want it. I'm gonna just take a clean brush with no color on it. And I'm just gonna go right in the area where I want it to lift it. I'm just gonna kind of just tap it with my brush, just to saturate it, just to soak it. And then I'm gonna go right on top and lift. So you see, I just lifted that, and see the color came off on my paper towel. And I'm gonna do the same thing until I get that color lifted, because I just didn't like the way that was bleeding into that. And now there it's gone. The problem is solved. I can now add some shadows. I could add white. Now let me show you what I'll do to make that beautiful frothy white kind of swirling stuff that happens in the water. I'm going to take some gouache. This is the Niji gouache. And I need to use, maybe I'll try to mix it up over here. And I kind of got to keep my brush clean, or maybe I can just use this. There we go. I need to thin it a little so it's not really thick, but I want to have it opaque enough, to have good coverage.
Ooh, Karen, two questions for you.
Yes.
One, one's more of a comment. Jane mentioned if you sprinkle with fine salt, now you can get sand dots.
Yes, exactly. Sprinkling with salt. Oh boy, now we're really getting the experience. Yes. I do. Yeah, and you can also do some other ways to make texture for your sand. Before you can do the salt, like while it's still wet, sprinkle the salt in, like Jane suggested. There's other ways, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, because I didn't even think about that. I was like just thinking about the color, and I didn't realize that, yeah, I need to probably do a little texturizing, and I'll show you that. So this is my little number.
Oh, sorry. And then one more question, just
sure,
because it relates to what you just did. Lynn was asking if the heat gun melts the wax.
As long as I'm not too close to it, it doesn't. It's fine. It didn't melt it, but if I get really close, yes, it will melt it. And it may be a good effect or a bad effect. I don't know. So I'm going to take, it might take some crumbs off, but no, it didn't seem to affect it. So I'm going to take my gouache, and I'm going to start maybe up here, and I'm just going to kind of reinforce that white area, that edge, that I had started with the crayon, but I'm going to kind of make some, like, I want it to be like varied in depth or width, I meant. And it resists. It's great. The crayon is even resisting my line, which is funny. But I'm just creating that edge. I want that nice sharp edge where the water meets the next layer, where it's just lapping over itself. And then what I'm going to do is take, once I get this line, let me just get that for you. Just gonna just following that drawn line, my pencil line right there on the edge. And now I'm going to make little cells, and I'm going to just make little kind of ovally, bubbly cell shapes, kind of like within, like this. You can see just circles. I'm making like little circles and kind of creating that look, when the bubbles pop on the water, they make these little cells. And I'm just kind of what I'm doing with my brush. And I can take a lot more time than I'm doing now, but I just didn't want to spend too much time on that. And I'm creating like these little areas. And since I'm not at the beach right now, but I know it well, I'll remember how that works. Those nice foamy little circly foam shapes that kind of go out. And sometimes in different shapes and different sizes too. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Just take that and make my lines. Now, if you don't have gouache, you can use a white pen. You can use, an acrylic marker would probably be really good. Some ink, whatever you've got that will kind of give you that, bring back your lights. You could do this ahead of time, but it'd be kind of hard to see what you were doing. So that is this one. And I know, like I mentioned, I'll show you more detail of how that could look if you're taking your time here. Now this way. See how these little wonky sort of, whatever they are, there's like little cells there, and that's better. And now then you can see also I splattered, and I'm going to do that in a moment with my gouache. I made these little splatters. I'm going to do that to give some texture onto the water, like little spattery shapes. And I'm just doing it within the, oops, they're all the same size now. And I don't think this is the smallest one, is it? I might have a smaller brush and I don't think I have it. But the smaller brush to get the tiniest little fine lines is the best that you can do. So now I've got that, and I'll just do little dots here and there. And I'd like to take my my little C, this little part here, I'm going to kind of block that off. And I'm going to take a screen. I haven't done this in forever, and I've got to see if it works. It's a little splattering screen. You don't have to have this fancy thing, but I did buy it and I wanted to try it. So we'll see what happens. It may not even work. And I might have tried it once and maybe I didn't like it, but I'm going to just show you as an idea. If you want to do a controlled splatter, we'll see if it even works. I'm kind of blocking my sand here, and I'm just going to drop that in. No, you got to blow it in. I'm not going to bother. I don't feel like doing that today. So, oops. I'm just going to take some more gouache, and I'm going to kind of give myself enough in there just to have a nice opaque splattery, enough, liquid that I can use. And I'm going to use my brush that I've already got wet, and we'll see. It's kind of might make big fat splatters. We'll see. It might not be a big enough brush to do this with, but I'm going to try. I'm just going to kind of tap my, it's not even coming off at all. All right, so that little brush doesn't like to need to load a little bigger brush than that for splattering. I'll use my big brush, make sure all the color's out, and load it with the white. And I'm just going to pick up some color and then splatter. And just kind of create, it's not working. There we go. I'm getting more color on other things. Let me tell you, I'm not getting it so much on the, there we are. I think I'm getting it on my arm. You should see my arm. See, it's getting everywhere. So there, but you got the, you see, I have a beautiful splatter effect. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the color for the sand. And I'm just going to take some of that brown, and I'm not really going to change it up much, but I think maybe just a little more brown, not much though. A little sepia, maybe a little gray. There, just like that. And now I'm going to block this off because I don't really want that to get the sand. And I'm just going to go in, and that's too dark, but that's life. And hopefully it'll block, I can blot that off. That's almost too even, but I'm just going to darken it, make it a little bit more textured down here maybe. And now, because I think that's kind of dark, all I need to do is just kind of tap it, and it will make it a little paler and a little bit more subdued. So there it is. So now the last step for this part is to make a shadow for everything. So just a little shadow, so it gives that feeling that there's some depth going on. And of course, I might even want to do darker, some darker things, but I'm going to use some Payne's Gray, which is a gorgeous shadow color in this, and I'll add a little bit of that blue. And I don't want it to be too dramatic, so I'm just going to very pale, maybe like that. Just a very, very pale, very soft shadow. And this one, I might even add some of that. So I'm going to put a little bit right in here, just to create a almost 3D feeling here. And I'm just doing it really, not trying to make my line exactly the same with, there we go, like that. So I just created a little shadow for the sand. And then I'm going to go here and grab a little more of that blue and kind of do the same thing up here. A little bit of shadow just to kind of, right, you see, just kind of create that dimension. And I may, yeah, that's it. And I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but I wanted you to see how fun it is, and it is to do these like 3D, like bird's eye view ocean scenes. And you'll see the difference when I take off the tape. Now, if you have tape, and I know this tape's going to tear that paper if I'm not careful, I'm going to show you a little trick that I would do if you have a hair dryer or like this heat gun. I'm going to gently heat the edges, just a little, ever so gently. Heat those edges, and then I'm going to remove the tape. That should help with the grabbing of the edges. We'll see. We'll see. And also another way is also when you're removing the tape, just do it like I just pull it back like this. Very gentle, sort of a peel motion, and just do it really slowly and at this angle, and it should be okay. I'm not seeing any lifting of the paper at all, so that's a good thing. I did that treatment, of course, with my pants. The lint on my pants, of course, was the first thing I did. And there, see how pretty that looks? Just like that. I love that. And I could make that a postcard. And I'll probably put a lot more detail with the little cells, the white, but I didn't want to, spend too much time on that. But you can kind of see how these can be. I'll grab another one here. There. This is one I did yesterday. Just a very soft. And I went back with some veins, like just a little bit of watercolor layers, just to kind of give it some texture. I do plan to put some lettering in this part, kind of like how I did with this one. I added some lettering to that space, and I plan to do that on this one. So, and maybe I could do it on this one. I don't know. We'll see. So there's that first one, and that one I wanted you to see the whole process. If you have any questions, please let me know. Now, the other one that I wanted to share, and of course I've got these two little pieces loaded up here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to clean it, my number 5. I've got quite a bit of indigo here, so some in my thing here, and I'm going to do some indigo and Payne's gray. Payne's gray stains a little bit more, so I'm going to try to stay away from it. I think most, like I said, the indigos should not. I'm just going to do a wash across, like a simple wash on the top one here, just a wet wash. I'm not even wetting the paper first. As long as I go fast, it should be a nice, pretty even wash. And I'm going to get that all the way down. I could make a sunset, or if I'd left the top part alone, I could have made a sunset or something. But I just wanted to show you a technique, and that's all I probably need to show you that. I'm going to let that dry. And another way that I love to make water is you can take your brush and you can do like just like back and forth. You can just make like little lines back and forth and do it in different colors. So I'm going to grab this turquoise color here, and I'm just going to do like trying to leave some white areas if I can, but if I lose the white, that's okay. I can always bring it back. Just kind of back and forth like this. It's kind of how I do a lot of my water kind of looks like this, or like this one. I actually, with this one, there's a lot of white that I've left, so I have to remember to leave areas of light. And if I wanted to go in and just scumble it, I call it scumbling, or you can just kind of go back and forth. And I am losing a lot of white, but that's all right. I can go back. And I'm just kind of creating this watery kind of thing going on back and forth, little lines, horizontal, like that. And that's kind of how I usually start one. That's my first layer with that. Now this one I have to dry before I can do the next thing. So with this one, I'm just going to keep going with layers, and I might even add a little green. Some kind of this I think this one is called phthalo green, yeah, which is a beautiful bluish green. And I'm just going to go wet into wet. And now I'm making my little strokes a little shorter, and I'm kind of just going back and forth, like soft little strokes back and forth. And since I've lost my white, I know I can bring it back completely. Now I notice one of the Payne's gray. This is the Payne's gray that I put down. It's not lifting, but the other color is. So you just kind of be aware of staining colors, and you can check for staining colors, whether if they're staining or if they can lift, by testing them out on swatching them out and then trying to lift them with your water. If it works, you'll know. Like this color, I want to show you something here because it's already done, and while this is drying, I'll show you. This one I did with a wash of blue. Now this is a different brand of blue that I happen to have. I'll tell you who it is. Like, it's a good color. It's a very deep blue and it's called Indanthrone blue, Daniel Smith. Let me just make sure it's this color. It's a very deep, no, it's this one. It's a very deep color, but it doesn't stain. So Indanthrone blue, just in case if you really love doing stuff like that, it's a great dark blue color. It makes a great sky, it makes a night sky. It's really dark, but what I love about it is it lifts so wonderfully. So this one I had done a stencil lift, and I'm going to show you that in a minute on the other, but I'm going to show you how I lift up little areas. So here I've got 3 areas that are lifted. I'm going to go ahead and lift another. So I'm going to take some watercolor or just water, and I'm just dragging it along, and I'm kind of just letting it soak in to the paper. That it's the dried watercolor that's soaking it. Now I'm going to lift it. I'm going to kind of scrub it just a little bit. And I don't know if you see that, but I'm seeing it. See how it's lifting. You can also dab with a clean paper towel or rag. You see how I was able to lift that color? That line just came right up. And that's what I love about lifting watercolors, that some have a lifting quality, basically non-staining, and it's so much fun because you can kind of go back and do fun things without having to use the white if you don't want to. Now this picture here, I'll just let that be. I thought it'd be fun to come back in, since this is just plain paper, but it's been lifted off. And now I'm just going to go back in with some turquoise maybe. I'm going to make little light washes, nothing fancy, but I'm going to do kind of a fun little, that's too much there. I'm just going to go like this and kind of create like little wonky shapes, just kind of going like this, like little lines, and kind of making it a feel of the water flowing, but it's not really, just making marks. And I like the light color. I'm able to come back and do it, make the marks again. I just love that. Now, this one, I could come back. I think I might do some lettering in this dark area, or I could add some lights. But I do want to show you a way that you can make lights if you wanted to make like little spray. I'm going to grab my gouache again. This time I'm just going to stick it. Maybe I'll leave a spot here because I'm just going to get some gouache and then kind of make a puddle of white here. And I'm just kind of like that. Now, the reason I'm doing that is I've got a sponge here. I want to talk about sponges. You see, I have a few of them. Now, these are sea silk and sea wool sponges, and they come in all kinds of textures. These are natural sponges. I had these for years. I've had them probably 20 years. They're well loved, and once you get one, you'll see you can make all kinds of shapes with them. Look at that. I mean, I can just see like mountains or seaweed, who knows. Just the texture alone can make incredible shapes. This is also one of those makeup sponges, and I'm going to use that to lift. So what I've done is ahead of time, I've dampened these sponges, and I think I'm going to use this one. I dampened them ahead of time. They're not soaking wet. The water has been mostly squeezed out, but I like to squeeze even more of the water out, and just kind of feels moist, but it doesn't have any drip. There's no drip. And I'm able to get a nice, nice soft thing here. Now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to tap it into my gouache. Now it looks like I might need to add a little more white. And just depending on the kind of inks or gouaches you have, or white opaque colors, you just have to kind of play with it. And I'm just going to do something that's kind of experimental here, and I'm just going to tap that right onto my there we go. See what I just did? I made like a spray. And I'm doing this by tapping and rotating my wrist. It's kind of a nice way to make texture, like highlights. And that's how I did that one painting that's now on the floor. I can't get to it. But these are ways that if you want to add light and water, a feeling of water, you can do that with just by taking your sponge and creating that. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to just show you what happens when you remove the tape. course, I didn't heat this. Hopefully it won't lift off anything. But the pictures look so much better once you take off the tape. So if you think that you might not have an image that you like, remove the tape and it changes everything. Like this is now with removing that tape, I'm actually able to get something really cool. I'm going to do one more thing because I want you to see the little lifting thing I do with stencils. If you're afraid to draw, or you don't feel like drawing, or you just got that, that just don't have any inspiration, you can use a stencil. Isn't that pretty? I just love that. And I would probably use some white lettering in there to create a little postcard to send, but there's that. Now, this one here, I hope it's ready to do my little lifting technique so you can see it. I might have to hit this with the gun just to make sure it's bone dry. And it feels like it's okay. And I've got a stencil here. Where did I put it? Okay, here it is. I found it. It's a little stencil. I'll tell you who makes it. Okay. Isn't that cute with the shapes? It's got like a ocean wave. It has like seaweed, rocks, little bubbly shapes, fun stuff. And this is just a real simple ocean themed stencil, and I'll tell you who makes it. Megan Quinlan Studio. Her stuff's on Etsy. So if you wanted to give it a try, I love this stuff. I love using stencils just as a jumping off point for creating. I mean, it doesn't even have to look like a stencil when you're done, but I'm just going to show you how I do this one. And then I'm going to kind of position it where I want it, maybe like in this spot. And what I usually like to do is I take my tape, and I just take a little tape, and I'm going to just anchor it right up here. And I'm going to anchor it maybe right there, just so it doesn't shift when I work on it. Now I've got my sponge. It's the very dense foam makeup sponge. And I'm going to lift up the color. And I'm just going to take, there's a lot of surface area here. It's clean, hopefully. Make sure it's not too wet. You don't want it wet and drippy. So you might need to just kind of make sure it's not too wet. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to just take part of it. I'm just going to gently take my sponge, and this isn't lifting. There it goes. It's not wet enough. So basically, now each paper, I'm going to have to say, the paper that you're using and the paint you use, it makes all the difference. So this is the Niji paint paper. It's not lifting as much, so there's not as much sizing on it as, let's say, Arches or something else. But you can do it, just do it gently, lift the color off, and then just kind of go back, and you'll get the image that you're looking for. It's not really dramatic, but I know it's there. And it's probably because I didn't make that light of a area, but I'm just going to show you. It will show that wave shape. And that's all I'm looking for in this one. So I can now take my paints or my gouache or my markers, and I can do some, wave making right now. So I'm going to take that gouache wherever it is. There it is. Hard to see white on white, but there it is. Okay. And now I can just use that. This shape is my jumping off point. It's not the end all thing, but what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this. Ooh, I'm just going to make sure it's not too thick. And I'm just going to go like this, and I'm just going to make it my own now. I use that as the guide, but not the end all. So it's kind of a nice way to just kind of go and make your own art, but using the stencil as your jumping off point, as a place to just get away from that, the blank canvas syndrome, which happens, right? And we can get kind of nervous if we have a piece of paper that's just plain. Now I'm going to take this gouache. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of my turquoise because I want a little blue tint. I know that's really cheating, but I do want a little blue tint to it. And I'm going to make little marks kind of like this. And I'm just going to make a fun little sort of doodled, very whimsical wave that kind of looks, the energy is kind of coming down the water. Sort of these little marks are kind of representing water to me. And I'm going to make them a little smaller as I go up and around as the energy kind of comes around. There we go, like that. And that's kind of probably all I'll do on that one right now. And then I may do some lettering on that. But again, I've got another fun little something that I can use. Now, this one, I'm going to talk about light and dark, and then I'll be done. It's almost done. I got 3 minutes. So this one, I'm going to start doing some really dark areas. And I'll take the Payne's gray and the indigo and put them, make some dark areas for my waves. And I'm going to go real general this time instead of real detailed, but I'm just going to take some areas and create a really dark, some really dark areas, and just kind of going like, just kind of leave an area where maybe the sun would be, you know, like light area, leave that, but then just make some darks and kind of random, just like that. And I'm really kind of not following much of what's underneath. I'm not really paying attention much to that. So I've got my darks. Now here's the trick on water. So if you're working on making water, whether it's from your memory or from a photo, if you're looking at a photo, you'll see how that works. But if you don't have the photo and you're just kind of creating water, the next thing you would do, and I've not done a lot of detail, I usually do more detail than that, but I'm just going to show you, or I'll do more dark, but I want to show you the next thing. So I'm going to clean that brush, and I'm going to put lots of white, my brightest white I can get. And I'm going to go right above each of these dark areas. I'm going to just do a little bit of white just to kind of contrast those out. And I'm going to do it on all, as long as they're not, as long as they're dry. But if you take that and make a super stark contrast, you're going to get that kind of that illusion of the reflection of the light of water. So you just kind of want to go right above your darkest areas. You can do it in other areas too, but that, you know, having that randomly go against the dark, you're going to get lots of that. So I'm going to show you what I mean on this. This is, there it is. Same thing here. I've got the very dark, and then I have the lights that just go right above it. So that's kind of how you get that feeling of reflection. And then here is, I'm going to probably put lots of that, because this is where my light source is kind of in here. So I'm just going to make more kind of shapes, and they don't have to be, you know, the more uneven they are, the more natural it looks, because you can even kind of make them wavy. I'm kind of going a little bit straighter than I normally do, but that's kind of how you do that, like that. Does anybody have any questions or any ideas that, you know, maybe something that you're going to do with your watercolors, and going to, if you have plans to go to find water somewhere, or the beach? It's pretty quiet. I'm hoping I hope that you're all with me.
Oh yeah, lots
Oh.
of comments, lots of questions. I'm trying to like just answer people in the comments, but
Okay.
yeah, somebody did ask about, okay, not this one, but the prior drawing with the wave. They were asking if you did the, sorry, I'm just scrolling up to make sure I asked correctly. Did you use the wax crayon to make the all white stencil wave?
No, I didn't. I actually, it's the paper. So this one here, it must have been, oh, I know it. I know, I'll tell you what paper it is. It was a Strathmore 400 watercolor artist tile. I just happened to see it, and I testing papers, they all have a different effect. So I didn't use the same color. I used Indanthrone blue, so which doesn't have any staining at all. And I used the Strathmore 400 watercolor cold press. I can tell, because see how the other side is really textured, kind of I don't know if you see that. It's a very different paper. It's not the best paper for me for watercoloring, but I love it for lifting. It's amazing. This is the Niji hot press. Now, I think I would have had a different experience with the cold press. So everything, you know, is going to be different. So I didn't get much lift there. It wasn't as magical as this one. Like, I'll show you what I mean. Every one is different. I'm going to do a little lifting here so you can see. With this. So try different papers and try, you know, you're going to find it's going to be different with everything. Here we go. I'll just do it right there. Of course, I know what I need to do. I need to block this up, because I don't want to ruin my beautiful little edges. I need to keep those edges while I'm while I'm lifting, because it will smear onto the edge. So I'm just going to take that and re-mask that right there and on this side here, because that's the only places I want to do the lifting. And I'm going to take this. I could either do, I think that would be cute. Just going to do it. And I'm going to take this and I'm going ahead and I'll just go for it. And then I'll take that and I should lift off pretty well, but it just depends on how wet. I mean, it doesn't even look like it's moving when I did before. So it's all, you never know. There it is. See how it lifted? Here, I'm going to just do it again. Well, now I need to find that where it was. Here it is. Okay. So really, it's just a matter. Yeah, there it is. I'm just gently scrubbing, but I also have to, you can see how white that is. This is Strathmore 400. So if you want to do that total lift, use the Strathmore, or you can use the Niji, but don't use Payne's Gray. If you use Payne's Gray at all, which I did, I mixed it up because I was being impatient and I wanted to make it dark. I added the Payne's Gray and it stained it, and that's why it didn't lift. So it's just a matter of the kind of paint that you're using, or the pigment. But that is so cute. Looks like a little bubbly kind of thing. So now you know. That's how I did that. Anybody have any more questions about that? Oh, there's another way too. If you wanted to just put a stencil, one thing I didn't show you, which I want to do. I didn't want to, this is like important. I'm going to do a big wave here. But this is another way. I'm going to do it with this one because I like that wave. No, I'm going to do it this one. Okay, let me just show you. If you're using a stencil and you just want the essence of it, you don't like, you just want to kind of get a start. There, I'm going to use that one because that's fun. And I'm just going to take my brush, and I'm not going to go too, I don't have a flat brush, which I wish I did, but if I had a flat, oh, I do. I have a water brush. Let me use that. This flat brush here, I don't want it too wet. I want it kind of dry. And I'm going to take some of my indigo and maybe some turquoise and green. And I'm not going to make it too dark. I've got even some gouache in there. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to take it and I've got it lightly loaded, and I'm just going to kind of go like this. It's a little bit dry because I have gouache on there. So that white gouache is mixing, and it's kind of a weird, it's almost chalky. It's different. I'm just experimenting here. Don't try it unless you really want to just play. And that's all that this is about, playing. You're going to just find all kinds of, when you play, you find really fun, happy accidents. And then sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. But this one might turn out pretty cool. So I'm just doing a very light wash using my stencil, and I'm not overdoing it. I'm not, it's a dry brush. That's what I'm trying to say. So there it is. I got a nice, pretty crisp edge. And now, instead of using just the stencil image, which now kind of looks like a stencil, I'm going to take my watercolor and I'm going to just kind of continue this, like maybe take that and go out like this and just change it up a little so it's not exactly the stencil. I'm going to need to make that shape a little different, like there. And you can do that. And now I've just created my own design, and using that stencil though as my guide. And then I'll let that dry, and I can do some other things with it. But there's that little shape, and I just love these just as a way to get the first shape that you're looking for, and then you can just work that. Well, this is interesting using with the gouache. It actually does something different. It's wild. Never done that before, but I really like this texture that's happened using the gouache. So there you go. I hope this inspired you to go out and paint and get your watercolors out and just throw it on the paper.
Thank you, Karen. So much inspiration. A lot of people are really excited about this. So even later when you click through, you'll see how excited everyone was over this demo. And
well, I can't wait to see. I just, because of my little technical difficulty, I can't even. I couldn't read my the people that were here. Normally I could see in the chat, but anyway, I just want to say hi to everybody and glad you came, and hope that you were inspired to paint today.